Welcome to Toop TV's newest segment, Fireside Chat. The original Fireside Chat was a regular radio show used by presidents to inform the public of the latest issues. It originated in 1933 and ran until 1944. But now the Fireside Chat is back and we're using it to tell you about the latest real estate issues. It's uninterrupted interviews with the experts in the know. So sit back, relax and enjoy Fireside Chat.
Well, today a very special event here at Fireside Chat because we have some incredibly interesting news for those of you that are not involved in any technology and you're completely naive to what's happening out there in the world. We'd probably just enlighten you a little bit. We don't want to scare you, but there are a whole new world out there of ways to sell property, and one of the most important ways at the moment, which is pretty much free, is to get to millions of people through the use of social media. So obviously it's got our attention. Now today we're lucky, we tapped in on a Sydney interstate visit from one of the gurus in this space, and that's Stephenie Rodriguez. So Stephenie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anthony.
And then of course on the right of you, Stephenie, is our own guru, our internal guru, and Marcus Simtone, who looks after all of our social media here at Toop&Toop.
Good to see you again, Anthony.
So welcome.
Thank you.
Now, just to get us underway, Stephenie, you're a very interesting person. We've just spent half an hour chatting to you, and we're now tweeting partners. But just tell me about you. Where you're from? Overseas. You arrived here. Just tell everyone who you are. Just a bit of background.
Well, of course, you've already given them my name, so we know that. I did arrive in Australia in 1997. I married a South Australian boy, so South Australia is very dear to my heart.
Turned him into a man?
Well, he was already a man. And he was already a doctor and lived in the Northern Territory. So my first foray into Australia was, in fact, the Northern Territory. And I think you learn a lot about a country going to its most remote part and moving in. Now we're based in Sydney. My background, I'm American, but of Puerto Rican heritage, so hence the Rodriguez surname.
Right, okay.
And I've been working in the digital space since 1997. My first incarnation, I think, into the internet, if you'd call it, was building websites for the Northern Territory government. So we've come a long way, and it's really exciting to see how social networks, devices like iPads are really bringing people together in marketing, communication and collaboration. It's very exciting times.
Now, you caught my attention. We're very much in this space. I think you've been following a bit of what we've been doing as well. Just your sort of overview of what is happening. Are we overreacting in saying that we think this is going to completely change the rules?
I don't think so, Anthony, and the reason being is having achieved one status as a veteran inside the digital space, if you would, we know a few things, and that is that one, the devices are only improving, and the communication and the ability and the power to know. The power for the consumer to know, one, what is available, the ability to share and find out immediately. We're seeing in retail environments now where people with mobile phones and smartphones are able to read barcode scanners and see what their friends are commenting on a particular product. So they're making purchasing decisions that are not only about the physical space and in real life, but in real time. I'm able to see what my friend bought on my Facebook page. So social media and social conversations are now converging into social commerce. And I think that's really powerful and dynamic. We've all gotten our head around online shopping, we've gotten our head around e-commerce, but what is this really meaning for the connectivity and the discussions that are going on online? And I think it's very powerful.
So realistically, I've been in this space since it's evolved, since 97, or the commencement basically of the
internet.
We
get a badge for that.
We need to be one of the
originals. We need 4 square badges for this.
And we've both been very involved in this. But the pace at which it's moving now, I need a Marcus who is pretty much fully in that space, and Tanya, who is the host of our Toop TV at the moment show, she's very much in that space. I need these people all around me because I cannot keep up. What advice have you got for people like me that, you know we need to be in it, we know we need to embrace it, how do we deal with it, as the average person, when there's so much being bombarded at us? Just give us a simple outline. How do you help us?
One way is to use the tools that are there, constantly research and update. So there are lots of websites online with news. Mashable.com is a great one to keep up with what's going on in the digital space and emerging space. Read everything you can get your hands on, rule number 1. Also invest in smart technology and smart people. One of the biggest challenges I think businesses face is when they leave their social and online reputation to someone who they wouldn't trust with a press release writing. So in doing this, having social policies in place in business is also critically important. Enabling your employees to participate and encouraging them. So versus that being only a function of one particular department like PR, everyone becomes responsible and participatory in a brand's growth and a company's health. And in doing that, it enables a lot of people taking that pub initiative of when people go and sit and discuss something in a very familiar environment, enabling and empowering people to participate with you. Giving signage and enabling people to see that you're there in that space. Follow us on Facebook, like our page, using your Twitter login, using Foursquare. All of these tools are free and available, and it only is of value if you use them.
Right, so now let's get into the real estate industry, because Marcus has actually built a device that we can send, to our clients.
That's right.
Marcus, do you want to just describe that, and maybe the two of you talk about it?
Yeah, so the Your Network product, which is what we've created specifically for the industry, I suppose, and our product is, we want to touch or reach out to those people that are selling their properties, but we want them to be passionate, and we want them to use the social media space for themselves. So you think about it, most companies, and we're included, will have a very large database of buyers, and we already have products in place, one we call Virtual Agent. So we send out basic SMS broadcasts, so very traditional email, just letting them know, hey, here's a property that you might be interested in. Have a look at the property on the web. But what we've done instead in the social media space is, well, we've got these vendors out there that, for example, have got a lot of network, I suppose, their own network of social friends, family, work colleagues and so forth that probably don't know a lot about what's happening in their life. They may have seen their property before, they may have had something to do with it. So we give them the tools, the vendor the tools to actually send out the information about their property to their Facebook, their Twitter, and their friends can then make comments. And so of course then it goes into the next network and so forth. But the great thing about that is they take ownership. They have a real passion about their own property. Hey, it was a great summer, the room in the south is so great, doesn't get a lot of shadows. And then their friends go, oh, you're really selling your place. It was great there the other day. And of course it moves in. So I suppose it's using the technology, the Your Network, to do something slightly different than just simply having a page where people can just see hundreds of properties appear on a page. It becomes a real passionate sort of way of using social networking.
That's really savvy, Marcus. I mean, what I really like about that idea is the ability of utilizing someone in what we refer to in our industry as the social graph. What is behind a particular person. You can then begin to also see relationships and correlation between behavior of folks inside the social graph. Also identifying key influencers becomes very powerful and compelling.
Okay.
So I think the intelligence that a platform such as yours would yield to you as a real estate company is very valuable, but the tools for the end consumer are also pretty clever.
Now, Stephenie, you've come from Sydney. You're the absolute the goddess. What is your Twitter?
My Twitter username is Digital Goddess.
I love it.
With one D though. You got to spell it wrong to get it right.
So spell it out so everyone can follow you.
G-O-D-E-S-S. So Digital Goddess.
Fantastic. Now, as the digital goddess of Australia, probably the world, who knows, your advice to Marcus and I, who love this space, how do we do better for our client by use of the social media on top of what we're currently doing? What would you do? If you were me, what would you implement straight away?
What would I implement straight away? I would look at context. So number one, the size of the audience that you have, you might make community goals around that. How many people are friends? And the previous metric would be about growing a fan base. We went from 100 to 200 followers. Well, that's really great, but so what? How are you utilizing those? So really looking at key influencer programs and also the blending of real life and real time. So taking the analog and digital and intersecting those together, creating more meaning for the end user by collaboration versus the push mechanism of only pushing out your content, allowing feedback and engaging with others around that becomes really very powerful.
Now, speaking of feedback, because we're in the real estate business, we're in the service industry, things don't always go great, and I admit that's not always great. So how do we deal with hostility? How do you deal with competitors pretending there's someone else putting bad things on? How does that work out? Because now it's been around long enough, there must be a pattern.
It's not uncommon, and we know in the rules of gamification, which is some science around online behavior that we look at when we're analyzing client situations, that there's always going to be 1% of a community that are the killers. And they serve a very valuable purpose. One, they're vibrant and they're watching your community. So if they're attacking you, know that you're doing something either really good or really bad. If it's a mistake, own it and address the person. So acknowledging, in many instances, folks...
Via the whole... public forum?
In many instances in Twitter, specifically because it is so vibrant, that somebody just wants to be heard. They're complaining or whinging about something. It's an opportunity to take that matter offline almost immediately by addressing them and saying, great, we heard you, let's address this, let's take it in a private environment. So often risk can be mitigated or at least minimized by actually actively listening. Engaging and having social platforms that do monitoring in real time, that send alerts, so you know there's an escalation, is a very valuable thing to invest in.
And that's the space you're in as well?
We do work in the social listening space, but I think it's a tool. There are a number of vendors who have that tool, but it is very powerful for brand monitoring, brand health, sentiment analysis, and watching problems and reducing escalation, I think, in negative. But back to the gamification, these killers are very important. What you want to do is have a strategy in place, a social protocol of what happens. So often things get messy because there was no way to put a red light, a yellow light, a green light to say, somebody's upset, what have we done about it? And for companies that have a social media strategy without an escalation plan, it's a little bit risky. So step one, implement an escalation policy or problem policy. Who needs to know and how fast? Dealing with problems, owning a mistake is often a very good way to say, you know what, guys, we did blow, but we're working on it. Yeah. So own your mistakes. And last but not least, finding those killers in your community. And rather than being the snarky Doberman who's on one side of the fence barking at people, turn him into your guard dog and have him protecting your community is a much smarter way. That can be done through rewards, through online advocacy programs, etc. So, those are some easy recommendations.